we're going to have everyone introduce themselves again. So come on over, and we're not giving, well, yes, I should say we're giving away another car, perhaps. That worked out so well last time. Come on over and have a listen. We're going to talk about how city policy affects development and how that can help lead us to the next hot neighborhood, and how far Philadelphia has come in the past 10 years. Why it's such a great market. So I'm going to ask each of you to briefly introduce yourselves.
My name is Gary Jonas. I am one of the owners of the Overlook and a partner in the Howe Group, which developed this project and develops a lot of multifamily and residential stuff in the city of Philadelphia.
And my name is Allan Domb, City Councilman at Large for the city of Philadelphia.
Oh, good. So, Allan, because you're here and you have such a wealth of knowledge on the city, I'm going to pose to you the question from the last panel, which is, what do you think is the city's next hot neighborhood?
I would say in the last 10 years, we've had over 100,000 millennials move into Philadelphia. Now also, I'm sitting here right now looking at this project and saying to myself, I'm a dinosaur. I started in '79 selling real estate. Anyone in here, by the way, selling real estate in '79? Nobody. So I don't remember, by the way, for the first 20 years, seeing a new home. There was no new construction. Zero. We never sold a new home. We never saw them. Never saw them. Independence Place, a condo was built and it was taken over by the bank, foreclosed. In fact, people think that condominiums make a ton of money. Since 1970, only 3 high-rise condominiums made any money. Symphony, 500 Walnut Will, and 1 Riverside. Every other building went back to the bank, which is an education process I try to share with my colleagues. Listen, you have to understand the environment. The environment is that most of you that are in this room today are what? The 1%. I'm just calling it the way it is. And there's a big feeling on council that we need to tax those people. I don't want to be a downer, but I'm just giving you the honest truth. But 10 years ago, we had 100,000 millennials move here in the last 10 years. We were rated the top 20 cities in the country, had the highest percentage of millennials move into Philadelphia. We've had tremendous growth in technology. We're known as the best biotech in the country right now. Pennovation Works. Have all of you seen Pennovation Works? It's unbelievable what's going on there. And so when you look at the city, it's really, really very positive. 10-year tax abatement. You all know the stats when people tell you, you got to get rid of the abatement. Homes over $1 million, only 2.8% got the abatement. 67% under 400,000 got the abatement. Who's the biggest user of the abatement? Anybody know? You know. PHA, Philadelphia Housing Authority. Biggest user of the abatement. So that abatement's been tremendous. I will say this, it is coming under attack. Talked about the construction tax. That was a bullet we dodged pretty well. Let me say this, a year ago I passed a bill called the Fiscal Impact Study, which allows any council member to raise their hand and say, on that legislation, tell me the fiscal impact of what it's going to have. And so Bobby Heenan, Councilman Heenan, and myself requested that fiscal impact study for the construction tax. And you know what it said? It's going to cost the city over 5 years $31.8 million. Now, how do you do a tax that costs the city $31.8 million? That sounds like a little insane, right? And actually, we passed it around to every member the day of the vote, and we were successful in having 8 no votes, but 9 people still voted for it. Thank God the mayor.
The mayor did not sign the tax, and then a new compromise is being hashed out as we speak.
So what's going to happen is the monies from the abatement as they burn off will go towards the Housing Trust Fund, but what they didn't tell you in the newspaper is that money is probably being reallocated from another area that's needed in order to pay for the Housing Trust Fund. Today, by the way, if you didn't see the paper, this was monumental, so I'm going to bring it up. I introduced legislation to eliminate drop for all new employees non-represented as of January 1st.
Right. Not relevant to the real estate discussion necessarily.
But
We do appreciate it. Definitely important.
Let me say this though. The reason why I'm in government is because everything that goes on in Philadelphia is relevant to real estate. Don't think that because it's not real estate related, it's not relevant. Every little piece is relevant to what goes on.
Right, I mean, from everything from, we were talking earlier about parking regulations to public transit to the congestion, and now the council and the mayor are working on reducing the congestion because someone, a realtor said, if Amazon did pick Philadelphia, then it would become another Manhattan. And look at parts of Center City right now, and Center City is the second densest downtown after Manhattan. So that is happening. So that we can't necessarily rely on private enterprise to fix the traffic congestion.
Let me talk about the Amazon. We don't know what's going to happen with Amazon. And Amazon's 50,000 jobs. But go back to 1970. The city's population was over 2 million, 2,050,000. Today it's 1,580,000. We lost close to 500,000 people. Do you think we could accommodate 50,000 jobs? Yeah, we can. No problem. And one other thing I want to mention about Philadelphia, our average home price is $141,000. There's no city of the top 20 that competes with us. And that's why it's been so popular for millennials to move here. That cost of housing is extremely affordable in our city. That's not going to change soon. You go to San Francisco, the average price is $750,000 to $800,000.
For a closet. I mean, I literally considered for a short period of time moving to San Francisco, and then instead of my 3-bedroom, 3-story row home, I really could have afforded a closet. It was really like that. I mean, and this actual development, I just learned, this house that we're in, this condo, is that. This condo goes for $699. So the 3 bedrooms and the roof deck and all that, it's not affordable compared to the $140,000 median house here. But they're calling it value driven, which to me, the top house with a condo with an elevator and all that in this complex is something like $800,000. So it's a really so that's the middle tier, right? Yeah, we all are the 1%, but we still, it's not like we have money to throw around.
Well, no one ever has money to throw around. But I will say this about interest rates. In 1981, I posted something like this on Facebook. In 1981, mortgage rates hit over 20%. Those of you may not remember a company called East Gerard Savings. Anybody remember that on Colonial Mortgage? You remember that. East Gerard Savings had a renegotiable rate mortgage for 21%. Every 6 months the rate would change. And you had to be a depositor to get that rate, okay? The home that cost $250,000 in 1981 had a higher payment than the home you sell today for $1 million. It's the affordability of interest rates that's driving this market. Don't ever forget that. That interest rate is so key. So this one, while it's $699, had a higher payment in 1981 when it was like $150,000.
That's crazy, and that's how, so government regulation can affect what happens on the micro level. I mean, that's like even what happens in the state and what happens at the city level, that affects. Do you, at the Howe Group, is that something that you think about a lot? What happens in city council, what happens at the state level?
100%. I mean, we know at the end of the day that somebody like Councilman Domb, who is advocating for the things that are important to us, drives what's going to happen in the city. As a developer, you're looking for consistency, right? You're looking for people that you know you can count on, and things that you know you can count on so you can develop. And if you don't have those things, it's hard to bring money into an environment because it's just too unstable. And so, without the tax abatement, there is no development in the city. It just doesn't work. And Councilman has been on that from day one. And look, we're okay that there could be some changes to it. And there's some things that we need to work on. And your idea that, hey, we step it down and we get to an 80% tax abatement is reasonable. And as a developer, we can live with that. But we need to know what we're dealing with, right? We know that there's these neighborhoods. And so you talked about the Penn Innovation Center. And that neighborhood right next to the Penn Innovation Center is a great neighborhood, right? Like there's all this job growth. There's all these great companies that are incubating there. And to be able to kind of develop in that neighborhood and take the risk to bring that up, you need that tax abatement. Without it, it doesn't work. And so these things, like what they're doing is critical to being able to develop and continue to grow the city.
It's a chicken and the egg, though, right? I mean, which comes first? The tax abatement. How do you go into new areas? Like what brings you into a new area?
Look, I think, at the end of the day, if you're going into a new area, you're looking for job growth, you're looking for affordability, right? Like you're stepping out, and when you step out, you have to say, okay, well, I have to provide value if I step out. And so, we look at that and we say, like, look, all this, if you look at, as an example, Point Breeze, which is a neighborhood that's a hot button, it's between the Navy Yard and Center City proper, right? That's where all the jobs are in the city, right? So if you're looking at that neighborhood, you go sandwiched in between all of this, like I should be able to provide housing in this area, and the pricing should increase. I think that same neighborhood, it's called the Forgotten Bottom, right? That neighborhood right next to the Penn Innovation Center is called the Forgotten Bottom, which is crazy as a name, but when you think about it, it is. It's this super valuable piece of real estate with a great core of ownership, and like we look at that area as one of the areas that we're super focused on.
The Navy Yard we actually didn't bring up in the last panel, but that was one of the potential sites for Amazon. Do we need Amazon to activate the Navy Yard? Could that blow up without them?
I want to get back to your previous question. What comes first?
Oh, what comes first? That's the main question.
Let's look at history. We owe a lot. Is everyone in here a real estate broker or in the real estate business? There's no potential buyers in the room. No one's competing for customers.
Depends what you have.
Okay. By the way, anyone of you could buy these as an investment too, because I always say this: you make a living selling it, you create wealth owning it. But let's go back to 1997. There was no new construction. You can all thank Councilman Frank DeCicco for putting in the 10-year tax abatement. It was that piece of legislation that kind of leveled the playing field to allow people to build. Because here's our problem. We have New York construction prices to build, but our prices are 1/4 of New York. So this kind of levels the playing field. And as Gary was mentioning, the abatement's going to be amended. And the question is, what's the least impactful in the market? The city studied with JLL 10 different analyses of the abatement. The least impactful to the market was keeping it at 10 years, in years 8 going to a 75% value, in year 9 going to 50, year 10 going to 25, which essentially makes it an 8.5-year abatement. That was the least impactful. And the reason why you want least impactful, everybody familiar with a firm called JLL? They just did a research analysis on the construction, commercial construction, not residential, commercial construction square footage from 2012 to 2018 averaged 2 million to 4.8 million a year. And this is construction that requires to be 30 months out planning. This is a building like the Laurel, like Comcast, big buildings. What's concerning to me is in 2020, there's only 123,000 square feet on the books. And no one's talking about that. But that's a big concern. And so what does that mean? That means that lenders are a little nervous in our marketplace. That may have been caused by government. In the last 2 years, commercial assessments have gone up 98%. Our budget has gone from $4 billion in January of 16 when I started to $4.7 billion now, a 17.3% increase. So those are all things on the horizon. What is good about it is that if you own existing real estate, you're going to do very well, because there's not going to be a lot of new competition coming on the market.
Is there room for new commercial development? I mean, is part of that because, look, taking the Laurel, for example, which is the last vacant spot on Rittenhouse, but look, East Market, that whole Chestnut Street strip was desperately dying for something. Now they're getting it. The gallery being redone. I mean, is there more room?
There is room. The problem is that we're having developers and lenders in our market back off. Picture this, you're a lender, and you're willing to lend on a big project 30 months out. And you're seeing what's going on in my body, City Council, where they're talking about changing the rules of the game. And you just lent $150 million on a big project, but they want to change the tax abatement or get rid of the tax abatement that impacts their ability to get their loan paid back. That's a risky investment for a lender to put their money in Philadelphia. I'll give you another example. These are real concerns. I know I'm supposed to be positive, and I am, but these are real concerns that I always figure this way. Prepare for the worst, hope for the best. There's a new building that was built on Walnut Street recently, an apartment building, between 12th and 13th. You may know the building I'm talking about, Goldenberg Group building. They told me that building today, at a cap rate of 5, the fact that it has a 10-year abatement has X value. Projecting 2.5% rent increases per year for 10 years, and when the taxes burn off 10 years from now, at the same cap rate, the building will have the same value.
And by the way, that's exactly how I underwrite a building. Like I look at it and say, if I can get a 25 to 30% increase over 10 years, I'm in the exact same spot I'm in. Now, the good news is that spurs development, right? Because I can't stay stagnant because I've got to continue to develop, otherwise my dollar value goes down, right? But the best thing I heard about what you said is this property is more valuable. And if you have clients looking to buy, now is the time to buy at the Overlook. That's what I got out of that.
I think you're going to see less construction, which is going to put more pressure on existing inventory, which is not a bad thing. And we're due for, look, let's be realistic. We've had an 8-year run. It's been unbelievable.
Positive, Allan. Positive.
I'm being positive, but part of my job is to be a realist, okay? And I just want, you know what? I want everybody to be prepared that that could happen. That doesn't mean, you know what? There's tremendous opportunity when that does happen. That's when the biggest fortunes are made, when those types of situations occur. So all I'm saying is, it could happen, be aware of it, and hope for the best.
So a question on that, what's the better investment property? Like, is it a standalone house or a condo? Is it in one of the towers?
What's the best investment is, that's a really tough question to answer. I will tell you this though, to Allan's point, we're seeing banks very much step back on their underwriting. They're underwriting 10% vacancies versus 5% vacancies in the Philadelphia market because of the amount of product that's coming on and because of some of the uncertainty that we see. And so what's the best thing to invest in is a really complicated question to answer. I don't think we can answer that here. You know, that's specific to the investor. But I think the important thing to know is, to your point, look, it's important to be conservative, it's important to make good decisions, and it's important to be prepared that when that environment does happen, for people like us that are developers, there will be opportunity. You have to understand that there's always opportunity in every market, and it's about underwriting properly. Like so my friend Will is over here, right? And he came up from DC to develop in this area, and he couldn't believe, one, the amount of red tape, and two, the amount of cost versus what he was doing in DC, right? And it was amazing to him. Now, the good news is he still made a lot of money on his projects because the projects were great projects in good neighborhoods and there's great momentum. But as that slows down, if we don't deal with some of the issues that we're dealing with, it becomes untenable, right? Like, that's the issue that's in front of us. And everybody can make money in a rising environment when everything's going up. But that's not going to continue forever. And when that doesn't continue, we need to be competitive as a city. And so the things that we're doing at the city council level are super important to making that happen.
I mean, that's what I was going to ask, led right into my question, which is that is the cutbacks in the investments that you've seen in the lenders, is that specific to Philadelphia, or as you said, we've had an 8-year run throughout the nation? Is it going on in other cities?
I don't think it's specific to Philadelphia. I think it's nationwide. I think there's a little more concern in Philadelphia, but I do think it's nationwide. So I will say this, as far as where's the best place to invest, the best place to invest is where you know the market the best, because you're going to make your money on the buy. So where each one of you knows the market the best, study the market, become an expert, and that's where you should buy. Real estate's a very local commodity.
So your neighbors, like, is there an agglomeration effect? You know, we talked about this earlier. I mean, like, how does a neighborhood all of a sudden, Inga's article this morning in the paper about how these developers are trying to stay a step ahead of gentrification and they can't do it. How does it happen? You know, what comes first? How do you get a property when it's hot, but before it's too hot that you can't afford it, that you can make money on it? How do you identify? I think that's what we're trying to do here, is identify those areas.
So I think the thing that's very interesting is in this market, if you're trying to do that, that's a mistake. You need to go into established neighborhoods that are doing well, that have a solid core, and you need to develop there, because when the market turns, you need to be in places that are stable. And if you're trying to speculate, like, that's a difficult spot to be where we're at in this cycle. Like, that's just my personal opinion. I don't know what Allan thinks, but I can tell you that I used to be very speculative, and everywhere I went, it didn't matter. Like, I went there and that neighborhood just got better because it was 10 years or 8 years of just a great run. Now, when I look at a neighborhood, I look at the core fundamentals of, like, in East Falls, right? 5 minutes to Center City down the drive, right? irreplaceable views on the river. Like, you can't get that. And so when you look at that and you go, all right, well, now the market's turning. How do I get to the right fundamentals? Like, I'm going to develop in a neighborhood like this that's a solid core neighborhood versus kind of getting to the edge of Kensington as an example, where like if that market contracts, now I've got problems. That's how I see it.
Yeah, we talked about transit as being one of the key drivers, but there's more than transit. I mean, there's going to be put in a boat dock out here, so if you can get back, and if you want to commute by boat, buy this apartment, commute by boat.
I will say this on value. I think Kevin Gillen did a study that City Hall was the center, and you used a compass to go around from City Hall. And what you saw was appreciation from City Hall was strong in almost every direction and happening, including here. And when you talk about 5 minutes to get in town, that's really accessible. But even areas, you know, what's the next area that I think is going up dramatically is like Port Richmond. It wasn't going up 5 years ago, and now it is. So I mean, and there's other areas that are, and we talked about Pennovation, I think is that the Grace Ferry area right
Yep.
there. So those are the, you don't have to be a genius, but you can just look and see what's going on, and if the market continues. And by the way, I will say this, if you're looking for a great investment, does anybody here work for the city?
Only you.
It's a good thing. Check out the land bank. I watched properties sell through the land bank. I was like sticking a knife in my heart at the prices we were selling them for. So inexpensive. It was insane. So I would check out the land bank.
And that was only recently established, right? Yes.
So the land bank is fabulous. It's a fabulous space for an investor to go and buy properties. And so as the city continues to enhance its process and it becomes easier to do that through there, you're going to see more and more traction there. And I agree with Allan. The city owns some of the best land there is. And so to be able to access that and do it in a transparent way, right? Because in the past it wasn't transparent. It was councilman prerogative.
Yeah.
And now it's, hey, look, the highest bidder gets the property, which is awesome. That's a great move.
Which is a kind of a twist from the normal way of private enterprise wants less centralization. This is in a case where more centralization actually led to more development, right? As opposed to less. You know, having each council person. We are gonna open it up to questions. So I want you to keep thinking about questions for us. If anyone has questions for Councilman Domb or
me.
Yes, absolutely.
So you talk about the fact that there might be a downturn in the market and that's the time to invest, because obviously own real estate brings money in the future. What would you tell, because I see a lot of new faces here who may not have even purchased their first home yet, to get them ready for that, what advice would you give them, the top 5 things that they should do to prepare for that, to purchase property?
Buy a book called The Millionaire Next Door. Anybody know the book? Live below your means. So if you're making, I'm using examples, 80,000, live on 50. You gotta save before you spend. This is kind of basic stuff, but it's true. It's something that I follow. If you saw me pull up tonight, I pulled up in a 2004 Mini Cooper. Green, that's right, how'd you know? But it's save before you spend. So that's number 1. Number 2, study the market. Real estate's local, you gotta study the market. You gotta know the values. And I will say this, there might be an opportunity right now in the market too. There are still very few bank sales still hanging around, so there are opportunities. And I think number 3, network with other brokers. Because if and by the way, when I buy property through a broker, I'm a buyer. I give them all the commission. You hear me? Anyway, I'm not buying right now. But I give them all the commission. Here's why. You want them to call you. Because you're a strong buyer, and I'm not mortgage contingent. So what is and commercial brokers want to call me because I don't want a commission, all cash or no contingencies, and they know I'm going to close. Versus me taking half a commission or something. And that gives that agent the motivation to call you. It's a very important piece, by the way. Don't take a commission if you want to build a relationship with another broker on selling you investment properties.
Great advice.
What Allan said.
So, Councilman, I have another question is related to investment and in any neighborhood. Do you?
Who in this room doesn't own their own property by a show of hands? Who doesn't own their own property? Who does own their own property? Okay. Yeah, who owns it? All right, Heather. Who owns an investment property by a show of hands? We got to increase that number.
So retail property for investment or residential? And does it matter what neighborhood you're in when you answer that question?
I think the question is, do you buy residential or commercial for investment?
Yep.
And so I started out buying residential, and I still occasionally will buy residential, but I think you buy what you know. I think you have to know the product. You got to know the market. You got to know how you're going to rent it. You got to know what's going on with the property, what's going on in the neighborhood. You got to know every little detail. You don't want to buy a property and a block away something a disaster is going to happen. You have to know every little detail. Go to the community meetings. In the last maybe 15 years or 18 years, I started buying more commercial, but only for one reason: time management. There's only, I own a lot of residential condos, so I can own 30 condos or one commercial property. It was easier for me to manage than one commercial property. But I will say this, and I'm going through it right now: when the commercial property is vacant, you feel it, okay? I have a property at 15th and Walnut, no advertisement. It used to be called Bally's LA Fitness, diagonally across from Butcher and Singer. I had a gym signed on from New York called David Barton Gyms. David Barton went bankrupt. It's been vacant for 4 years. The rent was $1.3 million a year. You start to feel that after a while. It becomes real.
So a guy that can't afford a $1.3 million loss for 5 years would tell you residential, right? I'm 100% a residential guy. And I will do residential with commercial as a component only if it makes sense without the commercial, right? Like my building has got to make money without the commercial, because when you get into not national credit tenants, that is, you could be 2-3 years vacant, and so that building has got to make sense in and of itself. And I agree with Allan, like going to the community meetings. Like I felt like such an idiot. I was talking to a guy about a property that we wanted to buy the other day, and he told me like this major thing that was going to happen when I was talking to the RCO that I had no idea about, and I was ready to buy a property that would have been a huge issue because I didn't do my due diligence properly, right? And so going to the community meetings, understanding what's going on, understanding your neighborhood, and then doing what I think is the safest investment out there, which is residential multifamily, is what I would recommend to somebody if they were getting involved in it.
And I agree with that, but I will tell you one flip side. While the Bally's Drexel building is a bit of an anchor around my leg, I had you all know the tenant. It used to be Houlihan's. When I did the conversion of Park, it's called Devon. The Devon restaurant over in House Square, on that real estate, and the Park real estate. And so when I took over that lease, the rent was $350 a year, not triple net. Triple nets were about maybe $75,000 a year I was paying. That was the lease I inherited. $350. Does anybody know the math on a 6 cap rate? What's $350 worth? $6 million? When the lease came up for renewal, here's the benefit why you guys think about commercial down the road. I hired 2 appraisers and asked them to give me an appraisal of the rent. The rent was $900,000. I sent it to the company, we negotiated to $875. What did I just improve my property for? At home, $500,000 on a 6 cap rate. Right, a lot of money. So there's a benefit for commercial too.
Is there do you need one to have the other? I mean, it seems like if you're talking about new neighborhoods, can you have a neighborhood that's only residential?
Yes, I mean, well, no. You need everything. A good neighborhood is usually a casual restaurant, a coffee shop, spinning place, or yoga, or some other workout place, right? And that's what makes up a neighborhood today. All those elements. So you need everything. You need that, and you need also the residential and the construction. Construction like this kind of a townhouse.
And dealing with the RCOs, the community meetings, do you have any tips for those meetings?
I do, but I'd like to just go back to the prior question first, and then I can give you my tips, because I've been through many a war on the RCOs. But I think the important thing here is, right, Allan's 100% right in that, there's opportunity for a neighborhood, right? The first thing, my belief is the first thing you need is residential density, which creates opportunity for commercial and kind of drives the whole train, right? But with that being said, if you're going to go into the commercial world and you're just getting started, you have to have the bandwidth for a year, 2 years. Like, you can't go in with the assumption you're going to rent that right off the bat. Like, granted, you get a credit tenant or you get that, that's a huge win for you and huge value opportunity. But if you're just getting started and you don't have the bandwidth for that, you know, that's a difficult process, right? So there is huge opportunity there, but it comes with risk. And so you just have to understand what that is going in. That's kind of number one. With the RCOs, I can tell you that the thing that I've come to the conclusion that the first thing you need to do with an RCO is walk in with no plan, right? Walk in with no plan and say, what do you guys want? And then from there, like, you can probably get where you want to go, but if you come in with a plan, generally that plan is awful and you're only going down. And so if you start with, hey, I got no plan, right? Like the last RCO meeting, I wanted to get 80 units with 80 parking spots, and I went and I said, I have no plan. Like, here's what I want to know. I want to know what's important to you. Right? They were like, we want 2-to-1 parking, and you know, and then they were starting to like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And then we talked through the process. By the end of the meeting, they were 1-to-1 parking as they talked through their own process, right? Like, I just sat there and was like, yeah, that's great. Like, let's work towards that. And we ended up where I needed to be, but it was them getting there instead of me kind of pushing it down their throat, and that works way better.
It's like dealing with your spouse. Just make them think it's their idea.
Yes, since my spouse is not here.
And I mean, the RCO process makes Philadelphia, like, just hammers home the city of neighborhoods thing. I mean, I was discussing with my aunt and uncle who live in a tiny town in Massachusetts, and the zoning and what they have to deal with as far as development is the same thing in Philadelphia, where 2 or 3 noisy, angry people can hold up a whole, you know, multi-million-dollar project.
I will tell you one thing though, right, as we're talking about Philadelphia, I will say that I've gone into the suburbs and Lower Merion and places like that, and I'll take Philadelphia every day of the week over those places. So, like, let's be clear that the city has its issues, but at the end of the day, there's a process, you follow the process, and you get to an end result. Like, you get out in the suburbs, there's 3 years of like, I'm not sure what you've even asked me.
Councilman, do you have properties in the suburbs, or is it just a city?
We're the suburbs, I don't have any properties in the suburbs. The only place I have property is in Center City, Philadelphia, in the little Fishtown, Port Richmond. And then I have a home at the shore, and when I would get bored, I'd buy investment properties down there, but none in the suburbs. I did want to mention something to you that's important to all of you selling real estate. Recently, you may have seen a report, you may see articles like the suburbs are booming with millennials, right? You've seen these articles? Pew came out with a report that said 51% of millennials, when their kids get to kindergarten, move to the suburbs. What they didn't say was 14 years ago, it was 91%. That's a very important fact. Like, we went from 9% that stayed here to 49% that stayed here, more than 5 times stay here. And I'm looking at this house, because this house is a perfect house for a millennial family with kids. I don't know where the schools would be here, but it's a perfect house with kids. So that's a positive fact you should keep in mind when people talk to you about, oh, we're going to be moving to the suburbs. We're almost 5 times better than we were 14 years ago.
Yeah.
And the Mifflin School is right up the street.
I'm having to figure out, I'm really learning how not to answer questions I don't have an answer to.
To be a politician, an elected official, I mean, isn't that what you guys do? Yeah, that's standard practice. Does anyone else in the audience have a question? You raise your hand first.
So I'm pretty new into the field. I work on the commercial side, and I guess my question is, you kind of touched on it before with, do you need commercial, not residential? If you look at, you know, west of Frankfurt, north of Girard, did the commercial activity push first, or did like Liberty Square come about because there was a need for additional supply?
What do you work for?
MSC.
MSC.
Jason Boggle, speak up.
Yeah, you're my tenants.
Yeah.
Okay, you're in 1845.
Yeah.
I'll let you answer that. I would say that, Gary said that residential comes first. I think that's kind of true, but the commercial comes right behind it, because you need those services to support the residential. And I noticed that realtors like myself, even I've seen this, we will advertise properties and we'll put in the ad, you know, close to Loco Pez or close to Bait and Switch or whatever, that people know those places to give it some pizzazz. But I think you need both. I really do. And I think the reason why Fishtown has done so well is because they've had both. They have tremendous restaurants, tremendous health and fitness places, coffee shops, whatever, and you also have the residential. So I think that's been a huge plus. I also think I'm a believer in the L. I think that Market Frankfurt L is an unbelievable asset of this city, unbelievable. And I would love to see it underneath the L, totally renovated, all the way up to Bridge and Pratt, which I know is a big wish, because if you're not aware, one of our biggest health issues, one of our biggest problems, I shouldn't bring it up, but I have to bring it up, is what's going on in Kensington with the opioid problem. We had over 1,200 deaths last year. We had 360 homicides. I go every 2 weeks. I drive down Kensington Avenue from K&A, Kensington, Allegheny to Lehigh. We have 710 people sleeping on the street. We have 2 bridges with encampments of over 40 to 50 people. It's a real problem. By the way, as bad as we are, San Diego is way worse, and San Francisco is 5 times worse. It's not just Philadelphia. It's a national problem.
And the fascinating thing, and something we have to grapple with as citizens and government, is that despite that, there are still properties selling now for, homes selling for 400, 500,000 right there in Kensington, that corridor under the L.
Well, that speaks to affordability, right? And as you kind of move out and you do, like Allan said, this circle from Center City and transportation, right? So it comes with transportation and all of those things. And so Kensington is kind of that next frontier. And so people are willing to pay a couple $100,000 less to get the convenience of that access to Center City, which is what's happening. And how it all plays out with the issues that Allan's talking about are going to be interesting, but it's definitely moving in that direction for that reason, because the L is such an asset. I think the Burke station is the #1 station in the city in terms of, like, something like that's crazy in terms of that access to Center City from there. So, like, a neighborhood, like this is how dumb I am, right? I was 100% against Northern Liberties like 5 years ago. I'm like, that neighborhood's never going to make it, right? Like, it's kind of out there by itself, and Center City's all the way over here. But, like, you discount what the L does for you, and like, it doesn't make any sense, because its access is so great and what it does for the city.
I always just think of real estate as a dartboard. And the red was Rittenhouse Square, and all the rings went out from the square. And when you think like that, you get a better picture of how values go. And so in a booming market, everything's booming up. In a downward market, it's those outer rings that will collapse first, because the core will still stay good.
I'm going to ask this question of you. I asked in the last panel. So is it can it ever happen from this, like Bucks County, and Ardmore, those are developing too. Can it ever happen from the outside in? City Line Avenue, will that bring stuff in towards West Philly ever?
I doubt it, to be honest. But I will say it's something we didn't talk about, which is coming on our radar, and all of you should be aware of it, is something called opportunity zones. Focus on this and go on the web. There are 62 opportunity zones in this city. Once they get the regulations down under the administration, this is going to be a huge, huge amount of money. I think I saw in Forbes a couple weeks ago, they've already raised $6 billion or trillion, some insane numbers for opportunity zones. Just to give you the quick overview, and I'm no expert, it basically gives investors in real estate or other businesses a chance to defer, and in some cases wipe out, gains that they've realized if they invest in what they've called opportunity zones. And this is going to be, in Philadelphia, we have quite a few of them. So that is, you're talking about investment, that is something to look at and invest in those opportunity zones now. I think you'll do very well.
And to that point, when you think of opportunity zones as these areas, like, some of the tracks that are in the opportunity zone are right in the path of development and are huge opportunities, and a deal that was, the way we describe it is, a deal that was an okay deal becomes a great deal. Like, you don't want to do a deal that was a bad deal, but if you had a deal that was kind of right on the border and it's in the opportunity zone, it now becomes a great deal. Like, that's the difference in what that opportunity zone does for you. And one of the biggest advantages, if you own real estate and you're selling it, like, if you remember the 1031, you sell a property for $5 million, you have to buy a property for $5 million. That's not the way it works with the opportunity zone. You make $1 million, you take that $1 million, you invest it wherever you want, and your taxes are deferred in that property for, I think, until 2026, and then the rate of taxes that you pay in 2026 is lower.
And if you hold it longer, you might.
And if you hold it over 10 years, what you have after 10 years is no tax on whatever you sell. So whatever gain on whatever you invested in becomes zero, right? So that is such a huge opportunity. And and where these opportunity zones sits are Grace Ferry, parts of Kensington, they're great areas. And so if you're really looking at that map, and there's a map of the entire area that shows you where all those places are, if you're looking to invest, Councilman Domb is 100% correct. Like, that's where you should be going right now.
By the way, all of you should have that map, because you can use that map to your advantage in selling real estate. You can tell people you're buying in the opportunity zone and give a little blurb about what it's about. It's going to be, by the way, it's a pretty smart move by the government to encourage investing, private investment, in supposedly areas that need investing distressed.
And it's the only bipartisan passed bill in forever, right? Like, I don't know what the period of time is, but it's like nobody can be upset with what they're doing with the opportunity zone. That's how great this opportunity is.
And locally, Councilman, or anyone, do you think that the Kenny administration is real estate realtor friendly? I mean, they didn't, whatever they talk about publicly is not necessarily real estate. But do you think overall the Kenny administration is a real estate friendly administration versus past administrations?
I think most administrations have been real estate friendly. I mean, the only part which is not friendly is when they raise all of our real estate taxes, okay? But I think in general they have been. Look, the mayor vetoed, basically, didn't have to veto, had been called the construction tax, realizing it would be a negative. I think he understands the value of real estate. So I think in general, I mean, real estate as a percentage of our total budget is small. City wage tax is pretty big. Bird taxes are pretty strong. Other municipalities have much higher real estate taxes as part of their overall budget than Philadelphia. So I do think they value it. I think we could do a lot more in changing our tax structure to make us more competitive.
Right, that's pretty impressive. I mean, Philadelphia is one of the most taxed cities in the country, and so if our real estate taxes are low, that does say something.
I will say to that point, like, I look at deals in the suburbs all day long and I can't make them work. Right? I develop in Philadelphia because of the tax abatement and because of the rent strength that's there. And like every deal I look at in the suburbs that I want to do, and every neighborhood I go into Conshohocken, I go into Media, I go into all these areas that would give you the same benefits you get from a Philadelphia Main Street, and you can't make them work. Like, they just don't work.
We have time for one more question if you still, I'm sorry, Councilman.
I have one more comment I just wanted to make. So when I learned real estate from Howard Britton, anybody know that name, Howard Britton? Jeremy knows that name. He passed away a few years ago, but he was a mentor of mine in the 80s, and he said to me, always deal from abundance, not scarcity. And how I relate it in government is we have a 10-year tax abatement. Scarcity is cutting the abatement or getting rid of it. Abundance is, how do we make it better for those who aren't participating? Should we offer a 20-year abatement for homes under $250,000? How do we make it better? That's dealing from abundance. So I think that's just something I've been trying to get through from some of my colleagues on taxation, but I think that's a good way to look at things, especially in real estate. Come from abundance, not scarcity.
It's a great point. It's like, instead of the tyranny of the or, the freedom of the and. This and that. We'll have a 10-year tax abatement, and we'll make it better for people who aren't getting benefits from it. Do we still have a question from the audience?
So so speaking of opportunity zones, the Philadelphia Land Bank is probably one of the largest owners of prime real estate in a lot of these opportunity zones. Is the land bank working towards streamlining the process of buying? Because it seems like there's a lot of red tape, and it seems to be a little difficult.
No. And here's the one thing you're going to get with me, the honest truth, because if I don't get reelected, I'm happy to stay in the real estate. No problem. But I will say this, we need to do a lot better job. The guy in charge of it right now is trying really hard. He's good. But it's a mess. It's not run right. As is, look, government in general does not run things well in anything we do. Tell me one area of government that is spectacular.
Parking authority.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I'm just saying in general, we shouldn't be in any operating business. By the way, speaking of the parking authority, we own 4 lots in Center City. What we should do, and I told them this, is we should hire someone like a Cecil Baker, find out the highest and best use, rezone it, and then sell it. We'd make more money from the taxes than the operation of the garage and cut it all the overhead.
The land bank's still actively buying too, correct?
Yes, well, we have, 40,000 vacant properties, about 15,000 pieces of land. And L&I, by the way, Dave Perry, is doing a very good job. He's someone in government who really has tremendous respect for me. He's been doing a lot of the demolition and cleaning of properties that need to be demolished and are dangerous. So you are having more land that way. But it's not working perfectly. They're trying to make it better. The councilmanic privilege thing is a nightmare. But hopefully we'll make it better.
Right, at LNI, and I think they're working on integrating the computer system that manages all of that so that different departments, you don't have to go through a different computer system and they'd all be connected. Your plumbing permits and your building permits and demolition permits.
Well, it sounds like we took everybody's time. It was like a little longer over, and we appreciate it. And I would like to thank Councilman Domb and everybody for coming, and thank you very much.